you tell us about availability this week?
Availability, Niko Petkovic is still out nursing a thigh injury. Who else is out? Wilfried Zaha will be out this weekend. He had an operation, as I think you're all aware. He had an operation on his thumb. He displaced a ligament when he played against Colorado, so he had to have an operation to right that. But he should be available again next week. He'll start training early next week.
And that couldn't be protected?
No, it was one of them that he went to see a specialist, and the specialist and consultant said it's best to have that done now. Otherwise, he might not be able to be replaced.
In terms of what would make him unavailable this week versus next, is it just the scar healing, or what?
Yeah, well, he had the operation on Monday, so the scar being there, the healing process, and I think he's been advised, obviously, by the consultant, not to do any strenuous activities. He's back in training gear now, but he'll have to play with a splint, from next week.
Was it a hyperextension, like where he got?
Yeah, I think he went. His body weight went down on it, and his thumb went down first.
So on the ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of how that affects your plans, are you more apt to go with two traditional wingers, or going back to Pep potentially on the wing, or did what happened last week maybe shy you away from that?
No, because what happened last week was we weren't good for 32 minutes, and I think it's always important that we don't get distracted between style of play and game plan. The only thing that we changed last week was our game plan without the ball, which was to press from out to in. That was the only thing that changed. Our style of play should not have changed whatsoever. So and I've explained that to the players. We still need to sprint more. We still need to work harder without the ball, and we still need to use the ball better. So I think I said when I first come here that style of play is not about systems. That's about what we want to be known for. And I thought we got lost because we just changed the way we pressed.
What in your control have you been able to try to change, whether it's maybe leaving earlier, training on the road, any kind of changes you might be able to make to change what could potentially fix the road form?
No, I mean, listen, we didn't play well at Colorado, we didn't play well at Seattle. We played well enough at Miami to come away with something, and we should have come away with something at Colorado with the moments and the positions we got into with the players that we've got. I would expect better final ball or finishes. The exception was that first game at Seattle. I think we've improved year on year with our road trip form. So I'm not overly concerned that we can go away and get a result. Because I think we proved that last season was our best away performances since we've been here as a club. So I've no doubt that we'll try and better that again.
Kerwin, opening week against Seattle, created some chances but struggled to hit the target. Since then, he's been very strong. Goal against San Jose, scored, was called back last week and was a live wire. What have you noticed about his recent form?
He's getting better, he's learning. I like how he's training. The fact that Wolf has come in as well as, put the competition up a notch for the likes of him and Liel, and I like that because they've got to raise their performances now to get into the team.
In terms of Liel, how much does seeing maybe Kerwin being called upon first maybe light a fire underneath him, knowing that there's no Wilf this week?
Yeah, well, I mean, that decision wasn't to light a fire. That was just how I saw that game at that moment. And he came on and did well, but this might be the weekend where Liel goes and does well. So they're both talented young players, and we have to remember that sometimes, young players. And I still see there's a lot to develop within their games, and then to help their careers get better and prolong it.
It almost feels like the situation with Patrick and Idan is the reverse of what you had with Carroll and Patrick a year ago, whereas a player who comes on off the bench and does very well, draws favor against the player who probably hadn't had the form from the start. How do you go about trying to assess that situation and who's best to be in what role?
That'll be down to my opinion. You know, I'll judge them fairly. You know, and what I think is going to be the best for us as a team, you know, will get the nod, and they both know that, and I'll be fair with both of them.
What are your observations on Montreal?
This will be their first home game. I mean, how bizarre is that in a league where they've played their first 6 or 7 games away from home? You know, so it's going to be a little bit strange with that being their first home game. So, you know, we all know how tough it can be, you know, playing away from home. So, you know, I was disappointed for the previous manager because it's been hard for him on the first 5 games away from home and then to lose his job. I thought he'd done a really good job. I liked the way they played last year and I thought they made it difficult for teams. But they decided to make a change, and now, you know, we've got a new interim coach in. So, you know, watching them and thinking about how they're going to play is a little bit different because you've only got 2 games to watch now.
You mentioned you prefer Idan at striker. Might you move him to the wing because out of necessity?
No.
This week?
No, I mean, I think in our wide areas, I think we're really good. You know, we've got Wilf, we've got Leal, we've got Kerwin, we've got Tavares who can play there, we've got Tiger Smalls who can play there as well. So I think we've got some really good options in the wide areas. We haven't got too many options down the middle. So I think it's really important that we keep working with both of them and improving them there.
I think I heard Zoran say that Idan turned down a chance to go to Israel and play for the national team. Was that the...
Yeah, I think he got called for the 20s during the international window. But obviously he saw Patrick was obviously going to play for the USA, and he decided that he wanted to stay and, you know, he played his first game and he did against San Jose and did really well.
Any chance you guys have heard an update on Walker Zimmerman or anything?
Yeah, no, I texted him the morning after and got a reply from him, and, you know, we had a sore head and a busted lip. You know, we're thankful that it was only that. I think he had a concussion and you know, hopefully he's right now.
Did you say anything to Kerwin to let him know, you know, everything's good?
Yeah, I think Kerwin reached out to him as well. I think.
In progress.
Is that a glitch in the system?
Glitch in the system.
Huh? Yeah. Yes.
You said Kerwin reached out to him as well.
I'm not sure if Kerwin reached out, but he certainly asked people who he knew, and you know, could reach out to Walker as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
The recency bias that a lot of people have when, you know, just the play of athletes like Patrick, you know, versus Idan, and this, that Patrick hasn't been putting the ball in net, Idan's coming on and doing well. I know that, as you know, with your history and all managers in your position, you don't let that affect you. But is there any way, or do you have anything to like say to fans as far as understanding the bigger picture of how things work and why it's a blessing, not a curse, to have these decisions?
It's an absolute blessing for us. You know, to have 2 talented players, 2 relatively young talented players as well. And I've said in many press conferences before, you're very foolish if you start judging players, you know, when they're 23, 24 years old. And with Idan, he's even younger. So we don't judge them. We want to help them get better. How we see the game at the moment will be our decision making for, you know, who we put into the team. What I see at the moment, Idan done very well in the game against San Jose when he started. I think Patrick's been okay as well this season without having as much service as he had it towards the end of last season. But I can see him being away with the USA team, coming back. There's a lot more confidence in Patrick now as well, and you know, there's frustration that he hasn't had as many chances he possibly could have. But I still look at Patrick, and the opposition still look at Patrick and don't want to play against him.
He gets a lot more attention now, which serves its own purpose for the others.
Definitely, he I think he's run for the goal against was it Atlanta or no? It was Cincy. His run took somebody away, and we ended up getting a goal from that. So he's certainly, when you've got him and Wilf in the team, they certainly create space for others within that team as well.
And when he takes position between centre backs, he's occupying both of them.
Yeah, he is. I bet Idan can do that as well. I mean, and and that's the beauty of having the two of them. And I'm really pleased that Idan came on and scored a really good goal for his first MLS goal, and I'm sure there's going to be lots more. And he puts his name in my head very firmly. As competition for Patrick if it wasn't there before.
Well, that goal where he made the pass into Ashley after he stayed within the play after getting blocked. He didn't.
Yeah.
There was no pouting and stuff. He stayed in the moment and created the assist.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a great maturity.
Yeah, from both, they're both maturing well. They're both very coachable, and it's a good position for us as a club, But it's what I get paid for is to make decisions who I believe should start.
And that's a similar situation with the wings and the depth that you have there.
Yeah, definitely. I've just named the 5 that we've got, and it pleases me that I can actually bring Idan on, and Idan goes and scores the winner last week. And I think it can only be good for the club.
Thank you.
No worries.
Dean, I know that overall where you guys sit at the table is pleasing, but is there something that you're finding with the team that is working really well or not working really well at this stage, like this 30,000-foot view as to what you like and what you don't like, things you want to improve, things you don't want to change?
There's been things that have definitely improved, but there's connections that we're still working on. When you do bring some new players into the team, you have to work on them connections and understanding, how to play with each other. But on the whole, we've not played top quality, but we've done enough to win games. And that's a good sign, because the history of this league is that it's a marathon, and it runs. You start training in January, and if you get to the MLS Cup, you don't finish till December. It's a full 12 months, so it's a marathon, not a sprint. And what you want to do is make sure you start well. We've started well points wise. We look every bit still a tough team to play against, a tough team to beat. Especially at home, but we still haven't found the rhythm that I would like.
And how do you go about building those connections? Does it happen in training, or
Yeah,
just kind of have to happen?
Yeah, no, training ground definitely. Day to day, training with an intensity, making sure you take that training and onto the pitch on the Saturday.
And guys away from the facility, though, I mean, how connected are these guys? I mean, do you know of if they're going off to dinner, after work?
Yeah, no, they're very close. They're very close. Even I'm going to dinner with Ashley Westwood, but that's because he owed it me for beating him at golf. But yeah, he won't like me saying that, obviously. But he was partnering my son, so he'll blame my son. But yeah, there's a big connection. There's a social feel about it, and when you're together for that long, you will need breaks along the way, but it becomes like a family, because you're together for so long during the year.
There's that sort of thing. Is that universal with all coaches, or is that kind of your style and how you want your teams to bond?
I think each will have their different styles, and I for instance, you see head coaches that go into teams where they actually don't even speak the language, and it doesn't have to be just verbal communication. There's lots of other ways you can go and communicate, and how best to connect with people because I keep saying our job is to develop and get the best out of the players, and if they know that I'm invested in them, then I'll definitely get something back.
I have a follow-up. Earlier when you mentioned that you're not overly concerned with the road start thus far, what do you point to that gives you that confidence?
Our performances have been better since Seattle, because Seattle wasn't a very good start. But Miami, I thought we were really good 11v11. Probably a travesty that we actually lost that game. We wasn't that good against Colorado. But we got into really good areas. Tactically, I thought we were good during the game. Technically, it just broke down an awful lot. So, what I see day in, day out in training tells me that we're going to go on the road and win.
And to follow up for more clarification on Will's injury, was it something that he further aggravated last week? Can you give us context on what he might have played?
No, he played with it last week. He didn't see the consultant until this week, and and that's when we found that the ligament was displaced and needed to be put back. No worries.
All right, we'll go to Sam on the Zoom.
Hey, Coach. Hope you're having a wonderful week.
I am. Thank you very much. And you?
Can't complain. My first question was, at the FIFA Club World Cup event, I think David Tepper and a couple others mentioned that the team would be having one of the Club World Cup teams at Patriot Health Performance Park. In addition, there's a good shot at having a men's World Cup team, one of the international teams, training at the complex next year for the World Cup. What sort of things do you think the team can learn or benefit from by hosting those other teams?
As long as they don't interrupt my training schedule, I'm okay. But there's been other teams that have trained here before, Real Madrid last season. And we got the chance to watch a little bit of the training. I met up with Carlo Ancelotti again, and managed to have a good chat with him again. So it gives us and our players and our staff the chance to see some of the top clubs in the world, how they work and how they set about day to day. So it's not a tournament that I'll be too interested in because we're not in it. We didn't get invited, unfortunately.
I know you've had some criticism in the past of MLS scheduling games over international windows. Today, there may or may not be a vote happening with the MLS owners to move MLS to the international schedule, the August to May schedule. Do you think that would be an improvement or a benefit to the league?
I mean, listen, I've got my own personal opinion on it because I've done both now. I've done the international calendar and I've done the calendar last year. For me, the international calendar will, I think, take the MLS as a league up a notch in world football, because then we're actually competing, in the same markets as some of the biggest teams in the world, and I think that's where it has to go. As I mentioned before, for me, January to December is such a long time. Players need a break. Coaches need a break, I can tell you that personally. I think matching the international calendar is going to be healthier for the league, but there's obviously going to have to be some things to iron out. Obviously, people in the north and in Canada, because of the weather during the winter, we're travelling up to Montreal now, who haven't played at home for the first 7 games. There's going to have to be some movement for everybody to make sure that games can be played.
And then finally for me, I wanted to ask about trophies in the Club World Cup specifically. Ash has talked all year, you talked about the expectation being the top 4 in MLS this year, and talking to Brand and some other players, talking about winning hardware this year has been a big goal for him and others. What do you think the club has to do to go to the next level and make the CONCACAF Champions League and eventually, the Club World Cup in the next 4 years?
Well, hopefully we're starting to do that now. As I said when I first came in here, our job is to go and compete for trophies, in every competition that we enter for. And, if we're not, then I'm not doing my job. But there's never any guarantees that you can go and win trophies. But what you've got to make sure is that you're in a position that you're challenging for them.
Thank you, Coach. Bon chance in Montreal.
Thank you.
All right, Steve, I think you have one last.
Yeah, just following up, MLS could just change the windows too to keep them even with Europe and the rest of the world, while still kind of keeping the warmer weather dates, maybe try to condense it. The league, when it was smaller, finished in October.
Yeah, but the way I look at it, I look at this calendar now. The most important part of the year is the playoff year. is the playoff games. We play playoff games and we have to have an international break, you know, and so you get through to the semi-finals and then you got a 3-week break until you play the next game, and it's also NFL season as well, you know. We all want, especially with the World Cup coming up, we all want, you know, football, soccer to lift, and I think it can do in this country. But what a great time to have playoffs in May when nobody else is playing, no other leagues are playing. I think it just, are they not, or who is?
NBA,
NBA and NHL, but that's not.
Yeah, but the NBA playoffs are in June, aren't they?
Yeah.
The end in June.
End of June,
Same
yeah.
time,
So, but in May, it's soccer season, and you know you're playing them games then.
NBA playoffs end here a lot sooner.
They don't even start.
You'd rather play 30 degrees than 100 degrees anyway, right? I mean, if you're a soccer player.
Yeah, totally. I mean, listen, last week was a warm weekend, and it was what 86, 90. You know, it's still hot. Going out there and playing at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
So how would you propose that it gets started? Because there's obviously going to have to be like an abbreviated season if it starts that way.
Yeah, I think there will be an abbreviated season if they're going to. I'm sure
Because the World Cup.
that's down to a lot cleverer people than me who come up with the fixture lists
So
and
these
the
international
fixture
windows,
calendars.
that's a FIFA thing, and and also the confederations keep adding more congestion in there. That's what's created.
Yeah, but the international windows are based on the international calendar, not the January to November calendar.
Sure. And then it for most fans and those who've not been in the game a long time, 10 against 11, they would counterintuitively they think, well, it's far better to play against a team of men down. Why is that a difficulty, like the Miami game, when you're prepared for 11v11 and then they lose a man? How does that change in a negative way?
I think it's the mentality. That's the shift. The mentality for the opposition then is to get behind the ball and make it really difficult and look to transition. Whereas 11v11, they're in a system that you've seen them play many times, so you understand the patterns that they'll be playing and where you can exploit them patterns.
So the perceived advantage really isn't there.
No, there's definitely an advantage when you've got a spare man, you know. But then you've got to work out the best way to open them up.
Okay. And the last thing was like communication with Idan. Is that mostly going through Liel on anything complicated, or is he picking up?
No, he's fine.
Straight away.
He's fine. He understands Birmingham. He understands Brummie.
All right, we'll go into there.